another episode of Stack and Scale. And today we're going back to clay. We're going back to clay. But today I'm really excited because this one it's a play that everyone runs all the time, and everyone, at least theoretically, should be running it. And people think about it all the time. It's the competitive outbound play. But I'm really excited because this is probably the more sophisticated table that I've built that actually gives us a lot more information than just the typical, hey, let's look on ZoomInfo on technographic data and then outreach to anyone and everyone on that table. Now, we are using the HG Insights integration in Clay to do this, and there's a lot of nuance to it, so I'm going to walk you through it all. But I really like this build because it applies to more than just outbounding competitive deals. You can look at it for things like just, it's a complementary product, and companies using this product are highly likely to buy your product. You could also kind of invert it and say, you can look at it as a kind of way to look at companies that might, your customers that might be churning. We can also look at partners, right? If they're using one of your partners, but they're not on your technology yet, it's a great target, and you can set up plays to help you go outbound against and co-sell with your partners and go outbound against some of these target accounts. So a lot of different ways that we can use this. But again, I really love the competitive play or these types of plays because you know that they're already interested in your product. They already bought it. They already have a champion. There's already a line item in their P&L for this. So higher likelihood of converting. But if we do it intelligently, like we're going to do it here, hopefully there's a higher likelihood of you seeing success with it, because honestly, competitive campaigns, they can be hit or miss. The other thing I'll say about successful competitive campaigns that I've run is just make sure you actually can confidently win against these customers. I know there's a lot of competitive campaigns. Hey, we just won this big customer and we took it away from competitor. Let's do a lot more of these. But there's actually no evidence that you can repeatedly win these deals. In fact, your win rate against competitor might not be so strong. So we always have to be careful there. But all that said, let's actually just dive right into this Clay workbook. Okay, so what we have here is, now I just limited it to 5 so I don't burn through all my credits. You hear me say that every single one of these videos, but that's why there's only 5 here. Let's kind of dive right into this. So when you are setting this up, what we're doing here, again, using HG Insights here, and then I'm using the Clay Managed account, of course. And then what I'm doing here is, so in this case, it's not competitive. It's actually very complementary products, slightly competitive in some of these cases. But for this example, again, I'm using my client Aurora here in the sales enablement space. And these are some of the other companies and products that are going to show up. So here you can put a specific vendor in a category, or just come down here and select the product from the drop down. So you'll see that's what I did here. But if there's one vendor and there's a few specific products or maybe attributes of that product, you can always select that. But for this example, I'm just straight up putting the actual products from these companies down. You can limit it here. I'm limiting it to 5 products per company and max 5 companies. Again, that's why you'll see 5 over here. And then we're going to limit it to a certain revenue range that we invest in, employee count. And then here, we're also looking at specific industries. So I'm using the SIC code. You can also use the NICS code. But also, I would avoid HG Insights just because I found that this was a lot less reliable and there's a lot fewer things to choose from. Whereas if you know NICS codes, there's so many NICS codes here. Actually, it tells you right here, 1,006. And then there's almost 1,002 SIC codes. So anyway, and then also here for this example, I'm just saying California, but if you sell internationally or just maybe here in the US or North America, obviously add that here. And the one other thing that I'm doing here, I'll show you why I'm doing this later, is including the first product verified date. So it's an extra 2 tokens, sorry. But I'll show you why that's important. Now, the one thing to note about this is HE Insights does run a little bit higher on the token usage, but we're going to use a few run conditions to make sure that we're just not going to be burning our tokens. And of course, if we're selecting right here, using these tokens are going to be actually finding you better companies. So it'll be worth it. All right. This is what we're pulling in. And of course, there's a lot of other things. There's a lot of other things that we can add here. If you want to just take a browse through those, see what makes sense for you, if it would be helpful for you. But these are just kind of the standard ones that we're going to pull into show on the table here. And then first verified product date. So that's the one we paid the 2 extra tokens for. And what we're going to do is months since they first verified, and then we'll use that in our scoring. So if they just verified a few months ago, that'll tell you something different than if they've been on it for a long time. And then product last verification date. So this is important because maybe they used the product at one point and maybe they haven't updated their website and the pixel is still on it or whatever it might be. So they might not be a customer anymore. So it might from the outside seem like they are using that product, but the actual last verified date was a while ago. And you'll see that's actually the case here. So what I'm doing here is I am looking at the last verified date being in the last year. And then I can relatively confidently say if it's within the last year, they're probably a customer. If it's further back, they're probably not a customer anymore, right? And you can change this to, maybe you do 6 months, maybe you do something else, but I'm just doing it for 1 year here. And then all of our run conditions are all of these other all of these other columns are using that as the run condition. So here we'll say, verified technology, only run this if customer is true, if the last verified date was within the last year. So that's why all of these other things here, all these other rows say run condition not met. So anyway, the next thing that we're doing here is we are finding how many active job openings they have, which should indicate growth of that company, right? And then again, only run if active customer is equal to true. And I'm pulling those jobs out. And then there's something else that we will do with this later as well. And then verified technology. So we're actually looking at, are they using specific ones? And then counting those. And then here we're using the Crunchbase. So previously I used Crunchbase and then I think it went away, and then I was playing around with it the other day, and then I was like, oh, there's the Crunchbase integration again, and I'm going to pull that in. So we're using the Crunchbase integration, and we are saying when was our last funding at the date and the amount, or the round, the date, and the amount. And then we have this recent funding equals true. And then we're also looking at their headcount growth. And here, we can actually pull in a few different ones. I'm just looking at employee headcount growth in the last 12 months. But if you look, we can actually pull in 3 months and the actual number, 6 months, 9 months, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things, other signals that we can look at too. But I'm just looking at employee headcount growth in the last 12 months. And then I'm taking all of this data that we pulled before, and then putting it into a score. So if you've seen some of my Clay builds in the past, I've used the formula to build the score. But this one, I'm actually using Clay's score row in Clay functionality. So what we're doing here is I'm scoring on 7 different criteria that we have on this table, and then giving it its different scores right here in this function. So the first one that you could see is I'm looking at the revenue, and these are the ranges and these are the associated scores. The next one is employee count. These are the ranges that I'm scoring it on, and these are the scores that I'm giving it. And as you can see here, yeah, you can do one, you can do decimals if you want. And then as you can see here, we actually don't do well against those really big companies. So what I'm going to do is give it a 1 instead of, you might think 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, you get the idea. Job count, or job count growth specifically. And then products count, recent funding. Oh no, here's the headcount growth. And I have all 7 criteria: months last verified. That's what we're pulling that one in. So if it was recently, if it was above 6 months ago, then I'm going to give it 0 extra points. So anyway, that's the scoring. Feel free to score it however you want. And then if you add any other ones, all you have to do is hit 8, right? And then, or 9, or how many ever you want. And then it'll come down, it'll add the extra one here. And then all you have to do is fill in the data. What are you actually scoring? And then is it exact text? Is it a Boolean? Is it a number itself? What are you looking for? And then how are you scoring it? So anyway, pretty easy, pretty straightforward there. I'm not going to save that. And then what we're going to do here is look up in Salesforce a few different things. We want to make sure that there is no open opportunity, there's no current deal, that they are not a customer. And last sales activity date, so I don't know why that one is 1970, something's a little strange there. But if last sales activity date was maybe in the last week or so, or maybe a few weeks ago, we don't touch that, right? You can also pull in honestly anything else, and we're using the lookup object instead of lookup company. There's a few different ways to do it within Clay, but lookup object I found is just to be the best one for use cases like this. And then the last thing that we have to do is find the owner, and we're going to find the owner of that account. And then I'm looking up, or I'm using AI to draft a opener based on all the different information that we just pulled. And then, of course, from here, there's a lot of different things that we can do in previous Clay builds that we've done. You can obviously package this up, put it into a dossier for a rep and send it to a rep. You can drop it into a Slack channel. You can update information back in Salesforce. You can use a native sequencing tool here, or push it to one of the other sequencing tools like Outreach or HubSpot sequences, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of other things that we can do on top. But this really is kind of the basic setup. Again, it is a little bit more complicated. It is going to cost you a few more credits, but it is worth it doing it the right way. We have those run conditions, so you're not burning a ton of credits. And again, there's a lot of different use cases for this beyond just a competitive campaign. Might be partner, customer, churn prevention, anything like that. So anyway, hope that is helpful. If you play around with it, would love to hear some success stories. And if there's anything else that you would want to know about this, feel free to hit me up or leave it in the comments here. All right. Hope that was helpful. Talk to you soon. Cheers. Bye.